Warning: this episode contains brain food that will lead to improved emotional and social intelligence. Give us 1 hour and we'll help you change the way you think about happiness. Harvesting Happiness with Lisa Cypers Kamen is fresh, optimistic, and purpose-driven media that promotes well-being from the inside out. Each week, Lisa spotlights diverse trendsetters and change agents who are the greatest contemporary thinkers and doers, devoting their lives to creating a better world in which to live. Your host, Lisa Cypers Kamen, is a widely recognized applied positive psychology expert, author, documentary filmmaker, and lecturer specializing in optimal lifestyle management. Let's get to it. Here's Lisa.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for joining me on today's show, where we are talking about self-care, advanced mental health, and alternatives to the medication merry-go-round. My first guest is Dr. Gregory Scott Brown. He is an integrative psychiatrist, mental health writer, and author. His commentary has appeared in the New York Times, the Huffington Post, Psychology Today, on The Today Show, and on NPR. He is an advisory board member for Men's Health magazine, where he regularly contributes content for mental health stories. And he is the author of The Self-Healing Mind, an essential 5-step practice for overcoming anxiety and depression and revitalizing your life. Welcome, Dr. Brown. Thanks for sharing part of your day with me.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for having me. Happy to be here.
Oh, I am always happy to talk about how we can help ourselves heal from depression and how we can bolster and improve our mental health. You and I share something in common with past battles with the dark cloud, as I like to call it.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's talk about how depression and anxieties impede our decision-making abilities.
Well, I mean, the thing about depression and anxiety both is that they're very common mental illnesses. Anxiety is one of the most common, if not the most common mental illness in the world. About 40 million Americans every year struggle with anxiety, and depression is not far behind. And both of these conditions can make it difficult for us to make decisions, for us to think clearly, for us to function as we'd like, interact with our family and friends. And that's why it's important that we have these types of conversations, because a lot of people, as you know, Lisa, who are struggling with these conditions don't necessarily get the help that they need. So that's why these conversations are important.
And they don't often get the help that they need because there is a stigma up until now, I think. I think we're doing a better job of validating and normalizing the need to take care of our mental health. But there's a stigma around like us not being able to handle our affairs.
Right. And I think that stigma is definitely one of the major issues that's prevented people from getting professional mental health care in the past. I think we're doing a lot better job about that recently with destigmatization campaigns. You know, Prince Harry has come out and talked about mental health struggles. You have other celebrities and influencers who have done the same. But there are also other problems like access to care, cost of therapy that also prevent people from accessing that professional mental health care.
And then when we talk about self-care, this is where we really can take control of our lives. What are the 5 pillars of self-care?
So in my book, The Self-Healing Mind, I spend a lot of time discussing these 5 pillars: sleep, spirituality, nutrition, breath work, and movement. And Lisa, through working with thousands of patients in my clinic, I have come to understand that it's not just medications and talk therapy, although those are definitely important, but it's those self-care pillars that are also important for helping us overcome or get through any mental health care challenge.
And I would also argue and support that these 5 pillars protect our overall health care, that it's not just the mental health. It is how we can bulletproof all of our health.
Well, listen, I mean, people have heard me say this before, and I'll say it again on your show. Mental health is health.
Yes.
I mean, they're the same, right? And so I think that, if we are paying attention to these self-care strategies, just like you said, we're not only improving our mental health, but we are potentially improving our physical health as well.
Let's go back to depression and anxiety and how it affects our bodies, because I would love our listeners to have a mental picture of this. If you think about the area above your eyes as being the dashboard or the control center of our executive functioning, and when we are in anxiety and when we are in depression, that prefrontal cortex area is not as effective in being able to make those decisions. And why is that?
I mean, that's absolutely right. So the prefrontal cortex, there are different parts of the brain that are implicated when you're talking about mental illnesses. The prefrontal cortex, the limbic system, the amygdala, which is responsible for anxiety and our fear response. It's like they're all just disjointed, not communicating with each other effectively. We take moments for self-care, even if it means a mindfulness activity or taking time for intentional breath. What we're in a sense doing is we're allowing these different parts of the brain to communicate with each other better. We're allowing important neurotransmitters like GABA, which are responsible for helping us calm down, slow down, and relax, to really work as effectively as they can to help us feel better and get through the day.
So we're talking about strengthening the muscle tone of the brain, really.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, and some people actually refer to improving our mental health as mental fitness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if we can approach mental health the same way as we do physical health, going to the gym, exercising our body. I mean, the way we do that with the mind is by really focusing on these 5 pillars for self-care, exercising our mind. It really can make a huge difference.
So what would you say to somebody when you say to them, it would be really great for you to have some movement, or it would be really great for you to focus on a little bit of your breathing, and they look at you with sort of that blank stare?
That happens every single day. I'm totally used to that look. Yeah. Yeah. What I would say to them, Lisa, people have to, first of all, understand that when we're talking about self-care, we're not just talking about the bubble baths and the ritzy massages. A lot of people say to me, how can I go to the kitchen and make a kale and Swiss chard salad when I'm too depressed to even get out of the bed in the morning, right? So what I'd say is start where you can, right? So self-care, in my view, is like oxygen. It's like food. It's so vital for us to survive and for us to thrive. And, even something like incorporating a little bit of movement into your day, even if that just means walking to the mailbox or doing some simple stretches in your chair, right? Or learning to improve your diet by making it just a little bit more Mediterranean, right? Adding pumpkin seeds to your favorite salad, right? Or your favorite dish, without feeling like you totally have to revamp your life, I think is the best way to start.
Let's talk a little bit about getting out of the house and the value of being out in the sunshine, because there's medicinal value in that sunshine.
Right. So the first thing is that, being out in the sun, being exposed to sunlight is a great way to convert vitamin D into its active form. And we understand, or learning more about the fact that vitamin D is correlated with our mood, right? And it's one of the most prevalent vitamin deficiencies in the world, right? And so spending some time outside can help with that. The other thing is just being outside. Again, we're assuming that if we're outside, we're moving our bodies, right? And moving our bodies can actually increase the expression of a protein called BDNF, which is kind of like a natural fertilizer in the brain. It allows our neurons to communicate with each other more efficiently, and it's been associated with a boost in mood as well.
And there have been studies done, and I'm thinking about that Japanese study that was done some years ago about nature bathing and the impact of being outside in nature in an effort to reduce suicide in the country of Japan, and how successful that was.
Right. And I wouldn't be surprised, just because, as we've mentioned, being outside, moving our body, focusing on mindfulness-based activities. This is not pseudoscience. This is evidence-based medicine. And I think anyone who's listening to this who has either struggled with a mental illness, or anyone who's listening to this who has a brain, which is everyone, should really focus on these self-care pillars, because it's so important for the way that we live, work, love, and interact with each other.
Well, and Dr. Brown is prescribing it, like right here and now. You're doing
I totally am. Yep.
An audible
Doctor's
prescription. Like you move your body, eat well, sleep well, play well, breathe well, and feel better. It's not rocket science. But then again, it's so simple that sometimes the simple things are really hard to do.
Right. And so the thing that I really focused on highlighting in my book, The Self-Healing Mind, is how we can each develop a playbook for, accessing these self-care pillars. Because, it's easy to tell someone, hey, take deep breaths, or get better sleep, or eat better. But a lot of us are like, where do I even start? It seems so easy. And so the thing that I point out in the book is that, there are specific strategies that we can actually access so that we can really pay attention to these self-care pillars that can help our everyday experience.
And I think one of the other elements or angles that your book, The Self-Healing Mind, presents is regarding men and mental health. And we're going to take a break in a minute. And when we come back, I want to really touch upon that, because our show, we have a lot of women, mostly women, but there are some guys. But how can we help our husbands, our sons, our lovers, our brothers, and our friends access this mental health care in such a way, or with the same passion they approach their work or their bodybuilding? There's kind of a disconnect there, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And, Lisa, that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. So when I was in my early 20s, I was a young guy who was struggling with depression, and there wasn't a book like this around back then. I was very resistant to the idea of professional mental health care. I remember my mom took me to a therapist. I actually walked out of a couple of those sessions because I just didn't feel comfortable being there. I didn't know what to say. And so I'm hoping that this book can reach as many people as possible. And, for women who are listening to this, who have a guy in their life, whether it's their son or dad or husband, that they think will benefit from this message, go out and get this book and, give it to them as a gift, because you never know. Reading through this might be that catalyst that really, encourages that man in your life to get professional mental health care if that's what they need.
Let's take a pause. And when we come back, we will continue the conversation with Dr. Gregory Scott Brown. To learn more about Dr. Brown and his work, please visit GregoryScottBrown.com. You can find him on Twitter at Gregory S. Brown, MD. And that's the same handle on Facebook and Instagram, Gregory S. Brown, MD. We're talking about the self-healing mind, an essential 5-step practice for overcoming anxiety and depression and revitalizing your life. We'll be right back, and that is a promise. Wait. Before we take that break, need I remind you 'tis the season to be jolly and all that jazz. This means it's time for holiday gift giving, and I'm focused on meaningful gifts that help connect me to the people who matter most. One of my favorite presents to give is Storyworth, an online service that helps you and your loved ones preserve precious memories through meaningful storytelling. Storyworth is one of the easiest and most creative ways to strengthen bonds, preserve memories, take a deep dive into family history, and create a precious keepsake. Last year, I gave one of my bonus moms Storyworth. Her keepsake book has allowed me to know her in new ways, and I loved hearing how much she enjoyed writing her favorite stories. Storyworth is the best darn hassle-free and no-ship gift that will make your loved ones feel cherished and connected, no matter how near or far they may be. When you purchase Storyworth for someone you love, each week they will receive an email with a meaningful question designed to elicit entertaining, surprising, and sometimes moving responses. For example, what is one of the craziest things that has happened to you? After 1 year, Storyworth will compile all stories, including photos, into a beautifully printed hardbound book that will be a treasure for future generations. With Storyworth, I am giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/HH and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/HH to save $10 on your first purchase. Now here comes the pause. We'll be right back.
To learn more about cultivating sustainable well-being at home and the office, visit harvestinghappiness.com and explore Lisa's experiential on-site brain fitness workshops, corporate programming, and speaking engagement services.
And we're back talking with my guest, Dr. Gregory Scott Brown, about self-care, advanced mental health, and alternatives to the medication merry-go-round. Let's get back to it. So at the break, Dr. Brown, you and I were having a good giggle about how to approach the man in your life when their mental health could use a little tune-up.
Right. And so what we mentioned, I don't think this is too far off. I mean, sometimes you have to mansplain things for us guys a little bit, right?
Yes.
So, mental health, sometimes it's kind of like having a flat tire or needing an oil change or tune up in your car. I think the more that guys can understand that mental health, again, is something that impacts every aspect of our life, right? That if we are more mindful, then we are more efficient at work. If we are more present, then we're able to be a better dad or a better spouse or a better lover. I mean, these things are important for guys. And I think that, helping guys understand their importance can really encourage them to pay better attention to their mental health.
As you were describing this, I'm flashing on some video that was made, YouTube video that went viral a few years ago called It's Not About the Nail. And I don't know if you recall it, but it's a man and woman sitting on the sofa, and the woman is talking to her spouse or partner about how hard something was. And she's going on and on about it's just so hard. And how men want to fix it and women just want their guys just to listen. And then suddenly you see her profile and she's got a nail sticking out of her forehead. And he's telling her, trying to tell her, if you just remove the nail, the problem will be solved. Well, it's kind of that in reverse, right?
Right. And the other thing, Lisa, that I just want to spend some time talking about, here's a lot of men who struggle with mental illnesses, whether it's depression or anxiety. They have a hard time identifying it as that. So many guys that I treat in my practice will come in and they'll tell me, I'm drinking too much. I need you to help me cut back on alcohol. And after that third or fourth session, I realized the reason they're drinking so much is because they're depressed and they haven't really talked to anyone or processed that with anyone. Or other guys will come in and they'll say, I think I have ADHD. Can you give me a stimulant that will, get rid of it, that will fix it, help me be more productive, right? And again, 2 or 3 sessions, and I realized what the real issue is that they're anxious and they don't really understand the signs of anxiety and how that can impact concentration. So again, through conversations like this and sharing these conversations, I think it can help all of us, man or woman, understand mental health, what it looks like, and how we can treat it.
I also think that the element of not being alone. I know that when I went through a mental health crisis, if you will, I was 30 years old. It lasted a year, and I felt very alone going into it,
Right.
And then once I realized that I wasn't alone, and this does happen to people when they go through major upheavals in their lives and traumatic events, being able to talk about it and normalize and validate that, yes, when we go through things, it is actually normal to feel these things. If we don't feel these things, we bottle it up, we store it away, and then it appears 20 or 30 years later.
And that's why, I spend so much time and effort in my own work, sharing my story. I am a psychiatrist. I treat depression, but I've also experienced it. Right. I mean, and just because, I have a medical degree or I've written a book or do this type of wellness advocacy work doesn't mean that, I'm not at risk for these same conditions that millions of people in the United States and around the world face it as well. Now, my message here that I want people to hear is that this is a hopeful conversation, because people can get better, right? And they do get better. And it all starts with having those productive conversations about how you feel. The worst thing you can do is to suffer in silence.
Yeah. And the suffering in silence, as many people do, is scary and it's sad, and it actually exacerbates the condition.
That's totally right. And the other thing is, if you're a caregiver of someone who is struggling with depression, especially if you're a woman taking care of a man in your life, one of the ways that depression manifests in men and in adolescents, I should say, of both genders, is irritability. And so, right, guys can get cranky. They can, reject your love. They can try to push you away. And it's not them, it's the depression that is causing them to behave that way. And so what often happens is, a guy is pushing you out of his life, and then that leads to more isolation and just exacerbates the condition. So the best thing that you can do, if you're taking care of a guy in your life who's struggling with depression, is to, number one, encourage professional help. And the other thing you got to do is to, smother that guy with as much love and compassion as you possibly can. Yeah.
I think that is one of the secret sauces here. That's the sixth pillar, the sixth element,
Number 6, right?
Number 6, love wildly,
Yeah. I'll have to include that in the self-healing mind part too, right?
Yes. And I think so. I do think that is the secret salve to this too, is that it is high quality love. It's not just if someone says, "Oh, I love you." Of course I love you. You're my partner. But it is, how do we show and express and nurture that love to the people closest to us, especially when they're hurting.
Right. And I'll tell you, it's not easy. So I don't want to pretend like it's an easy process, especially when depression is, telling you a bunch of lies and being mean to you and, pushing you away. But, even as a psychiatrist, sometimes I'm on the receiving end of that from my patients who are trying to push me away. But, the longer you can hang in there, you notice that at the end of that, when people do ultimately get better, they are so grateful to you for not abandoning them through that process.
And I think we should emphasize that depression is so treatable. Anxiety is so treatable.
Yes. Yes.
It's like if you have a headache and you take Tylenol or aspirin or drink a strong cup of coffee, that's going to help the headache go away. Well, the same is true in this mental health sphere too.
And we don't spend enough time talking about that, Lisa. I mean,
we don't.
When people...
Well, we are. You and
me.
Right.
But when people think about it, people think about mental health or mental illness. I mean, the things that come to mind are depression, anxiety, suicide, maybe derogatory words like crazy or insane. I mean, we don't think about hope. We don't think about living with purpose and balance and contentment, right?
Oh.
And those are the things that I think we need to focus on when it comes to mental health, because that really applies to everyone in the world, regardless of whether or not you've been diagnosed with a mental illness.
Well, that's now the 7th pillar. Is the meaningful work, right? Like being of use to society,
right? Right.
And that is a huge antidepressant, actually.
It totally is. It totally is, right? And I think that the more time we can spend really focused on living with purpose, balance, contentment, and hope, the better off we'll be, and not only today, but tomorrow and in the years to come.
Agreed. And also how we teach our children. As a formerly depressed person, I know that impacted the way I parented my kids and how I made conversation about feelings important. And I suspect that this is how we change the legacy also around mental health.
And we're seeing more people, more parents and more teachers, really pay attention to the importance of social and emotional learning. Education, I guess, from an early age. And
Yes.
so there are a couple of groups in Austin where I spent some time where my clinic is based, that actually focus on that, focus on after school programs, focus on education, because again, I think that it's important that our children, as they grow up, understand their emotions, learn how to talk about them, because I don't think that it's always innate. It's something that we really have to be intentional about teaching.
Yeah. I would love to hang out with you again. Like we have so much more to talk about. We will do it, because I think that these conversations help heal. Before we go off, I want to just remind everybody that, if you don't have access to mental health care in your direct community, that COVID has given us the gift of telehealth now being a very normal part of healthcare practices. Whether you have insurance or you don't have insurance, there is access for everybody now. And I think that has been the upside of the plague, if you will,
Right. Yeah. I mean, and the thing about it is, just like we were saying earlier, if you are struggling and you're having trouble accessing a mental health care professional, I mean, there's so many places that you can reach out to. I mean, psychologytoday.com is a great resource. Calling your local university and asking them for referrals is another resource. And as you mentioned, Lisa, so many of us are in the telehealth world these days. So that actually expands access to care as well.
Dr. Gregory Scott Brown, you are an angel. I can't wait to hang out with you again.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yeah.
I highly recommend this book, The Self-Healing Mind, an essential 5-step practice for overcoming anxiety and depression and revitalizing your life. Please give it to anybody in your life, not just the guys in your life. I think everybody can benefit from this book and learn how to take better care of ourselves. To learn more, please visit Gregory S. Scott. I'm going to say that line again. To learn more, please visit GregoryScottBrown.com, on Twitter at Gregory S. Brown MD, and the same goes for Facebook and Instagram. That's Gregory S. Brown MD.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thanks for being here. We'll be right back.
Did you know that happiness is actually good for your health? Happy people live longer, are more productive, and make better partners, parents, and professionals. Connect with us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and follow Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen for a daily dose of inspiration.
And we're back continuing the conversation with my next guest, Dr. David Feifel. We're talking about self-care, advanced mental health, and alternatives to the medication merry-go-round. David Feifel, he has earned a medical degree and a PhD in neurobiology from the University of Toronto, Canada. He completed an internship in internal medicine at Toronto General Hospital and his residency training in psychiatry at the University of California, San Diego, where he currently holds the rank of full professor. And Dr. Feifel has a lot of qualifications and focus in the study of depression, ADHD, mood disorders, anxiety management. And he's come to talk to us today about what's on the horizon. And there are a couple of really exciting areas that are showing great promise in the treatment of depression. Welcome, Dr. Feifel. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, well, this is a pleasure. And this is something, I often ask my clients. I do a lot of addiction and trauma recovery, and I ask them what they want to know about. And the younger clients all want to know about ketamine.
It is a very interesting and very unconventional development for psychiatry, let's put it that way.
Well, let's talk about, first of all, just the scope of the problem of clinical depression, because depression really is rampant. Loneliness in society, particularly in the Western world, I think really is an epidemic, and we focused on that in the past. But depression, when it's in our DNA, when we come from a family line where there is depression, how how do we get ourselves help? What are some of the things that we can do that would bring us to someone like you or a center like yours where we can get help?
Well, I think one of the first things is to be able to recognize when somebody is suffering, whether it's yourself or one of your loved ones, when somebody is suffering from depression, that really is beyond sort of what we colloquially talk about, being down or having a dour personality. It really is sort of a clinical dysfunction where the capacity to feel pleasure. The centers in the brain that allow us to, look forward to things and to be excited about things, even when things aren't so rosy. Those centers start to shut down, and life, all the richness of life starts to kind of go away, and everything becomes very dark and drab. So I guess I would say the first thing is to recognize when something is just not right. This is not the way, sort of quote unquote, a normal person should feel. And that leads one to start asking, how to get help.
And this brings up a very good point. We're not talking about the blues. We're not talking about situational depression or sadness where someone dies or someone's going through a difficult period of time. Maybe they've lost their job or they're going through a divorce. We're talking about something that is pervasive, ongoing, that life is not able to be viewed or experienced in color.
Exactly right. Exactly right. This is, unfortunately, depression is used in two ways. It's used, in gosh, I'm really depressed. My team lost yesterday, kind of a way, where we really mean this is sort of just I'm feeling just temporarily a little bit down because of a kind of a normal disappointment. And we also use it when we talk about the clinical medical condition, which is technically we call it clinical depression, major depression, but there we're talking about a very different thing. We're talking about a pervasive decrease in ability to kind of just have our brain function normally and feel the normal ups and downs of life.
And would you agree or disagree that part of the problem with the lack of sufficient treatment available today is in part due to the stigma?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's something that I've seen over my career get better, but there's no doubt about it that it remains a major hurdle to people seeking out appropriate treatment and getting better. I think it is something that people are not as comfortable admitting to as they would, for example, if they started to have symptoms of cardiovascular disease or metabolic disease or anything like that. So it remains sort of somewhat apart from other organ dysfunctions, if you will.
And the destigmatization of depression and making it okay for people to seek treatment, I think will improve largely in part to more being written and produced about it in the media. People who do have depression coming forward and talking about their own successful experiences of how they got better, that it's really okay. You can be depressed and you can get better.
Absolutely. I think the role of the media and celebrities and so forth is just huge, because I think that people look towards them for what is normal and what is okay to admit.
And here's the interesting part, that when people who are treating clients in a clinical setting, the old school paradigm is the clinician doesn't self-disclose, right? They're supposed to be sort of the neutral conduit for the work to occur. However, in my own practice, in working with clients who are, in some cases, experiencing severe depression, when I made the choice to begin to disclose about my own challenges in the past, something shifted in them, in that they were able to see hope. They were able to see possibility.
Yes, I think that's actually very powerful, and that sort of that paradigm of sort of aloofness, I think is starting to give way to a more kind of realistic expectation of the doctor, the therapist patient relationship, and I think being a fellow human being also is an important part of the therapeutic process. Probably, I wouldn't say probably for sure, not just in psychiatry or psychology, but in medicine in general. So I think in some respect, our patients want to see us as having more knowledge and wisdom than them, but they also want to see us at the same time as humans as well, with the same kind of vulnerabilities and challenges.
And I believe that sort of taps into trust, that we begin to trust people when we have proof that what they are saying has value, and then that it is actually true. They can see somebody who says, I've had terrible depression and I've been able to get through it. Here's how. You too possess the tools and resources, and you've outsourced support to get your self-help, and you too will get there. You need to stay the course. You need to work through whatever treatment protocol you've developed with your clinicians, but there is hope. And really, that's what I want to talk about too now, is tapping into hope. And we started the conversation talking about the drug ketamine. And I would love, before we go to break in a couple of minutes, I'd love to tell our listeners a little bit about this drug, because many of them may not be aware of its original uses, the recreational uses that young people love so much, and then how it has evolved into being prescribed.
Well, sure, yeah. Well, ketamine is really, although it's seeing a completely new life in terms of treating people with psychiatric illness. It's really an old medication. It's been around, I think, since the 1960s. Developed as an anesthetic, and it's an anesthetic that continues to be highly used today in every major hospital and outpatient surgical, suite. I think that you'll find ketamine being used because it's a very, very useful agent in putting people to sleep for surgical procedures. And you mentioned the the street use of ketamine was discovered by people that also has some very interesting, let's put it this way, recreational properties. So it goes by the street name of Special K and other things because it produces a psychedelic kind of experience at doses that are lower, obviously, than the doses that doctors and anesthesiologists use to put people out. About 15 years ago, a group out of Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City did a study where they were looking at, they were interested in the pharmacological properties of ketamine. It represents a category of drug that modifies a chemical system in the brain that's very important. So they really had very scientific goals to find out what happens to people when you modify this chemical system. And so they did a small study where they took people with depression, typically people who had not responded to other medications, and they infused ketamine at very low doses, and they were really surprised to see that a large percentage of those patients experienced a very rapid improvement in their depression, and that started off a great interest in it.
This is amazing. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, we'll carry on the discussion. I want to direct our listeners to you at UCSD to learn more about Dr. David Feifel. Please go to profiles.ucsd.edu/david.feifel, Feifel. I will repeat the contact information later on in the show. We will take that break, and you do clinical research on campus, and you are researching ketamine as well as TMS, correct?
That's correct, yes.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Who says money can't buy happiness? Whether you are a skeptic or seeker, check out Lisa's new book. Are we happy yet? 8 Keys to Unlocking a Joyful Life. A boot camp manual for greater emotional fitness is available at Barnes & Noble, Amazon, IndieBound, and HarvestingHappiness.com. Here's a truth bomb. Emotions are contagious, and happiness is a universally desired state. But we tend to forget that we all have the freedom to be happy or the liberty to be miserable each day, regardless of external circumstances. Explore the journey of human happiness, how to find it and keep it, with Lisa's documentary film, H Factor. Where is your heart? Visit harvestinghappiness.com to learn more.
What is your happiness?
And we're back, continuing the conversation with my guest, Dr. David Feifel. We're talking about self-care, advanced mental health, and alternatives to the medication merry-go-round. Let's return to the conversation. And we'll get into TMS in a moment, but I just wanted to wrap up the thoughts that David has on ketamine and why it is such a valuable drug in the research that you're doing now. Dr. Feifel, please just carry on about ketamine.
Well, I should clarify, by the way, that we are both doing research, and also we're one of the first places, I think, to go beyond just the research and actually offer ketamine to patients as a clinical treatment. So I think what drives a lot of the excitement about ketamine is that our field of psychiatry has been frustrated for quite a long time, in that we've not had anything new to offer patients. Medications do come out and are marketed, but essentially since the first established antidepressants were developed in the 60s, these antidepressants aren't that different from each other. The efficacy rates are quite similar. And so we have a whole slew of medications created by pharmaceutical industry, and unfortunately, there's a very large percentage of people with clinical depression that do not benefit from that. So we have this group of people called that we refer to as having treatment-resistant depression, or TRD, and for a long time there was really not a lot of options other than ECT, or what is sometimes colloquially referred to as shock therapy, for them, which is a big sort of step forward. It's very invasive, has a lot of side effects. And then it was discovered that ketamine, through this study that I had mentioned, had this remarkable ability to produce rapid improvement in depression within hours in some cases, which is something we've never seen in depression. Our treatments all take a while to kick in, and here was something that worked right away. And so we starting to research this, and also starting to offer it to patients who were in that TRD category. And it's been quite remarkable. It's not a panacea. This is not a drug that's it's a cure-all for depression or anything else. But many patients who really had no hope and were not responding to other things are getting relief from ketamine. What's interesting about it is that its antidepressant use requires that it be given at doses that are much lower than the doses traditionally used for anesthesiology to put people to sleep, for example, for a surgery. And at those lower doses, people have a psychedelic trip. So we administer it, in the clinic or in the hospital, and patients will have a 30 to 45 minute trip where we call it, the type of trip is called a dissociative trip, where they're feeling that their consciousness and their body are disconnected, and they often feel like their consciousness is floating, and there's often a very positive, relaxing feeling, and they often feel that they have insight into the nature of the universe. It's kind of an experience that many people describe as spiritual, or very godlike, where they just feel very, they lose their sense of self and become very one with the universe. The trip ends, and ketamine washes out very quickly, and they're able to then go home with under the supervision of somebody, and often within 24 hours, if not immediately with the trip itself, they will experience a very dramatic improvement in their depression. Now, I was going to just add that the big limitation to ketamine that we're all struggling with is the fact that these benefits will only last a short period of time, anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks, and in some cases maybe over a month from a single treatment. So patients do need to come back and get boosters as it stands now to continue to benefit.
So what I wanted to just ask you is, you run a neuropsychopharmacology laboratory on campus at UCSD Medical Center. If somebody wants to explore the uses of ketamine for their depression, would they be able to come into your program? How would one seek this out to find you or access to the treatment?
Well, we have an email address where they can email us. My team will receive the email and provide them information about how to move forward in terms of filling out some forms and then coming in for an intake and so forth. And I can give you that email address if you want.
Yes, I would love to share it, because this is really offering hope for relief for many who up until now perhaps have been hopeless. Certainly this is what I see in the clients that I work with. Those who are challenged by addiction will ultimately say, that depression is where it started for them, and they were trying to find relief when they couldn't have relief in conventional treatment. The antidepressants were not working. And ECT, like you mentioned prior, is such an invasive option with side effects. And I do know this firsthand because I've had family members who have gone through it. In terms of memory loss and just a kind of a general slow factor or malaise that is present after the treatments, it's hard. And so ketamine does offer some hope. And the other area that I'm really excited to talk with you about is transcranial magnetic stimulation, also known as TMS. Most people do not know of this treatment, how it works, and how to find the treatment.
Yes, TMS really is revolutionary. I think along with ketamine, it is the other thing that's really exciting in the field of psychiatry in terms of breakthroughs after a long period of relatively few advances. Now, TMS is a paradigm shift in the way we go about treating depression, and in the future we think other psychiatric illnesses, in that it's non-pharmacological. It doesn't sort of rely on directly changing the chemical imbalance in the brain, which is sort of kind of a storyline that I think has become very popularized about depression being a chemical imbalance, which is really the truth. The dirty little secret is that there's no scientific evidence for it. What there is evidence for is.
Can you just say that again? Because that's really important. That in the past or up until now, people have considered depression a hormonal or chemical imbalance in the body. And what I heard you just say is that there's no proof of that.
That's correct. That unfortunately is a nice story, a nice narrative. But we've known for a long time that the whole notion that there's some missing chemical or some low chemical in the brain is absolutely not substantiated by the scientific evidence. People have been looking for chemical abnormalities for half a century, not found any. I think it's largely driven by the fact that medications were discovered initially by serendipity to help in depression and other psychiatric conditions, and therefore the corollary of that was the assumption that, well, that must mean that the depression itself is, if it can be improved by drugs, it must be somehow a chemically related condition causing it. And since these drugs boost a certain category of medication, of chemicals in the brain called monoamines, which are things like serotonin, which many people I think have heard of, and dopamine and noradrenaline. Because of that, there was the assumption that depression must represent abnormally low levels. Well, we've never found low levels of those chemicals in people's brains. When we can actually experimentally lower those levels, people don't become And the other thing is that the medications boost levels of those chemicals within hours, but they don't improve depression within hours. So all those things really indicate that this is not really a straightforward, nice, tied up storyline.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
So with ketamine, we now know that it is administered as an inpatient process, or you go into hospital for a period of time to receive the treatment. What about transcranial magnetic stimulation? Is that done on an outpatient basis? And how many treatments generally are required to have some responsiveness?
Yes, TMS is done on an outpatient basis. The protocols that are used today, and it's a continuously changing field, are that people come in every single day for about a 30 to 40 minute treatment for 4 to 6 weeks. And the difference here is what we're targeting are circuits, brain circuits that we know fire abnormally in depression. So the device uses pulsed magnets to physically coax those brain circuits to increase their natural firing rate, the way that we see that they do in people who don't have depression, and over time, it's sort of like a physical personal trainer for brain cells that are a little bit too sedentary, and in a specific part of the brain, the left frontal part of the brain is really where we target. So over time, those brain circuits start to fire on their own, just like a person who is sedentary after several weeks of being kind of coaxed to exercise by a trainer, will start to feel more motivated and more fit, and start to kind of work out on their own. And then we see people typically start to recover from depression.
Dr. Feifel, we are out of time, and I right now want to invite you to come back, because I think what you have to share is so valuable, and if we can help in any way to get this information out, I want to do more of this. Before we go, I want to give the website to find out more about you and what you do, and that would be http://profiles.ucsd.edu /David.Feifel, Feifel. And you can also probably get to him by Googling Dr. David Feifel, who is a founding director of the UCSD Adult ADHD program, the UCSD Transcranial Magnetic Stimulation program, and the Center for Advanced Treatment of Mood and Anxiety Disorders. And that would be where the ketamine information would lie. David, thank you so much for being with us. And will you come back? Share more?
I absolutely will. I'll be delighted to.
Oh, great. We're going to make that a date.
Thanks for joining us on Harvesting Happiness today. This is Lisa Cypers Kamen on behalf of my guests, Dr. Gregory Scott Brown and Dr. David Feifel, wishing you kind thoughts, kinder words, and the kindest of actions. Until next time, remember, happiness is an inside job. Happiness is your inside job. Please go out and rock your day, and remember to be kind to one another.
Keep harvesting your own happiness anytime and anywhere from the comfort of wherever you are. Subscribe, listen, and share hundreds of downloadable episodes via our free app or from our libraries at toginet.com, iTunes, Google Play, and other fine podcast platforms. To learn more about Lisa's global consulting services, please visit harvestinghappiness.com. Spread more joy by liking us on Facebook at Harvesting Happiness and following Lisa on Twitter at Lisa Kamen. Harvesting Happiness is produced in collaboration with TogiNet Radio, KBUU Radio Malibu.net, and is available on PRX, the Public Radio Exchange.